Daily Detroit is brought to you by the community. Support our work at patreon.com/dailydetroit.
Hello and welcome to Your Daily Detroit, recorded on Monday, January 25th, 2021. I'm Jer Stays. Today, Fletcher Sharpe joins me to talk about the University of Michigan pausing all their sports, the new Lions head coach, and it looks like Matt Stafford won't be here very much longer. Well, let's just get started. It's good to hear from you, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
Oh, of course. So, bottom line, Michigan athletics are put on a 14-day pause due to a surge in COVID-19 cases. This started on Sunday. It has a lot of impacts. It's made national news. According to the Michigan Daily, they are saying, and this is as of Saturday, that there were 5 confirmed cases of the new variant with 15 more presumed positives. I'm going to guess by this time there are a lot more, especially to warrant the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services to basically have guidelines to say shut it all down because of the novel COVID-19 B.1.1.7 variant.
Apparently, a student traveled somewhere and came back to Michigan and brought the strain there. Speaking to other sports journalists and seeing other publications, as of now, it seems that University of Michigan is the only Big Ten university that has this new strain. We have to assume others do have it just from the sake of, it's a strain that people don't know how to look for it yet. But the University of Michigan is the only one that publicly say, we have it here. So hopefully the big brains in Ann Arbor can do what they can to kind of cull it and keep it there and then hopefully neutralize it so that we can progressively get back to whatever normal is, quote unquote.
I don't know how much of that normal we're going to get with this new strain being confirmed here in Michigan. And then also, not just in Washtenaw, but in Wayne County too. This is something that a lot of experts really worried about.
As they should. That's the one problem you deal with when it's a pandemic and you deal with viruses, is sometimes viruses, you beat them back a bit and then they mutate and then come back stronger. And the things you did before to beat them back kind of need to be kicked up a little bit.
Yeah. And so what kind of impact is this going to have on the teams? I heard a lot of noise around a lot of people being frustrated because of the U of M basketball season.
Yeah, U of M men and women's basketball, volleyball, and hockey will all be put in a pause for right now because you can't play. If the new strain has solely been confirmed at Michigan, you can't send those teams out to other universities to go play because essentially you are making them super spreaders. You can't say, you know what? It's at the campus, but let's just go somewhere else. If they're at the campus when it's been confirmed, you have to stay there. And University of Michigan basketball currently is 4th in the nation. So that's going to maybe put a pause on who they're going to play for 2 weeks, which might or might not affect their ranking, which frankly, I don't care because, again, it's a pandemic with a super terrible disease. Women's basketball on 2-week pause as well with their star forward Naz Hamilton, who recently put up 50 points in a game, which is a Michigan record, men's or women's, in a basketball game. It was a loss to Ohio State. Got a nice retweet from LeBron James saying keep up the good work, which every basketball player wants, whether they like him or not. But nonetheless, all this doesn't matter because it's about keeping these people safe during a very, very serious pandemic that's claimed the lives of many, many, many people. I, for one, am happy that they shut it down. If it pops up at 2 or 3 more schools, I think basketball in the Big Ten probably should just stop. I don't want to go to the critical, scary moment, but if this is a new strain, we don't need to be spreading this strain around. And if we know that it can be spread through physical contact, as we've read in other reports, probably shouldn't be sending people out there to play with each other in a physical sport like basketball or hockey or volleyball.
Well, and for listeners, just to recap, the 4 games that have been postponed are against Penn State, Indiana, Northwestern, and Michigan State. You were talking about contact, and that is a debate in question right now. When it comes to high school sports, there are a number of parents who are getting very frustrated with restrictions for students dealing with high contact sports like wrestling, basketball, and the like. It feels like there's a whole discussion happening here where, to me, it feels like you've got kind of 2 realms of thought. You've got one going, well, the pandemic isn't that big of a deal. And then you got another one going, well, we really need to worry about this one. And policy-wise, you just got a lot of people bucking against restrictions.
Yeah, and I'll be a little bit softer, I guess, on the kids here because high school kids are way more kids than college kids are. But you still shouldn't be playing. I get why you want to play. To the same vein as I've said for college kids in the past, high school kids, this is you hanging out with your friends. Yes, you're playing a sport because you want to play a sport, but this is really your social life. For me personally, when I played football, ran track, whatever, while I wanted to compete in this sport and I wanted to do my best, it was time for me to hang out with friends of mine. It's time for me to see people, crack jokes, whatever. You build camaraderie with just friends. You take these relationships, build through for the rest of your life. So like to have these taken away from you, it really stinks. And I know some parents want their kids to go into sport, to like teach them values, teach them activity, etc. Some parents want to put their kid in a sport because they don't want to watch their kids. I know a lot of parents were, a little frustrated with the schools being shut down because it meant they actually had to spend time with their kids, which I don't know what to tell you if you don't want to spend time with your kids. I understand the frustration of like, oh, I want my kid to play. The pandemic's not that serious. What if you send your kid out there and he gets sick, comes back, gets very sick, survives, but has, severe brain injuries from a result, dies potentially, or you're fine, but then gets your parents sick and they die, or gets you sick and you die, something like that. The short-sightedness of people thinking, well, it's not a big deal. These people are doing it. Why can't we do it? I don't understand how for something this serious, you could just say, well, whatever. It doesn't affect me, so it can't be real, especially when you see it affecting the person next to you.
Well, in the general population, though, I think there is a lack of understanding of how bad long COVID can be when you're dealing with it for, weeks, months, those sort of things. But I wanted to ask you specifically, what about the arguments around mental health? Because that's one thing that I hear a lot is that the mental health of the kids to go out and do things and get out of the house and all that kind of stuff.
You improve drastically. You can get out the house and do stuff. Speaking from someone who's plays sports and had a sport canceled from COVID. I mean, it's not professional or anything, but I play soccer, for those who don't know, in the Detroit City Football League. I play 3-4 days a week, typically in a year, when it's warm out. So this summer and this fall and this spring, to be able to hey, you can't go out and do this. You can't go play soccer with people. It stinks. You might have a rough week. It might be your chance to go play semi-pro football or go, play soccer or go play basketball or go do whatever you need to do. Or for a kid in high school to go play this sport that you're pouring your all into. You might not go play in college. You might not have a scholarship to go play your sport. This is your chance to go work out your frustration. That one math teacher gave you too much homework. That one social arts teacher picked on you in class and you're frustrated. You go out there and go jack a home run or something, or go, score 40 points, or go lace someone out, or go, pin someone in wrestling. And they're telling you can't do it. It stinks. You're stuck in your house, and eventually the walls of your house start to just all look the same and get really boring, and it makes you sad. You see the sunlight coming through your window and you can't actually go out and experience it on you because you have to stay inside just to be safe. It'll mess with you a little bit. It's not great, but in the same vein, we'd rather people try to work through this internal sadness than have them go out there, be happy, and then be dead.
Well, this makes me think of a statistic, and I haven't done the research as much as I'd like to into this, but this is something that I think we should look into. Public school enrollment has fallen by 53,000 students since last year. 53,000 students are vanished from the Michigan education system. And one wonders if there aren't some cases where people have gone and taken their kids across state lines, other things have happened, because to me, that's a huge gap, and that's very much out of the norm to see that many kids go away in 1 year. And I wonder if we'll see the same gap next year.
I can't speak for the full ledger of kids because, I'm not sure. But I can say recently, Detroit Jesuit basketball coach Pat Donnelly from my alma mater, Detroit Free Press interviewed him, and he said very bluntly, he's like, I'm worried that a lot of the talented athletes who are from Michigan will leave because Michigan's still closed for sports, but Ohio isn't, Illinois isn't, Indiana isn't. Highly rated prospect Fletcher Lawyer, brother of Foster Lawyer from Michigan State, son of John Lawyer, former Pistons coach, was a stud for Clarkson High School. Once Michigan shut down, he waited a little bit, and now he's went to Indiana to go play basketball and continue playing. A few more star people went to Illinois to keep playing. Coach Donnelly's worried that you're going to lose people. Schools are going to lose entire maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 kids to go to different states to go continue going forward. I know some people were like, well, what does that matter? If schools are here for academics and such. If these kids are trying to better themselves and they have a legit chance to go play collegiately in a sport, 1 year of not playing a sport will horribly impact your recruiting status. If you have almost signed scholarship from Alabama to go play football and you take a year off to not play football, they will say, you know what? Have a nice life. We're going to go with this other guy who's been playing for whatever. So if you really are serious about the sport, especially if you really need to play and you're in Michigan, you can't play, a parent might take you out and take you somewhere else. Or they might take you to a prep school where you just basically play the sport. You learn from homeschooling or from somewhere else and you play the sport. Perfect example, Amani Bates, the number one high school prospect based in Ypsilanti. His freshman year, he played for the Ypsilanti High School. After that freshman year, he saw how much publicity he was getting. His father did after winning the state championship, winning the Mr. Basketball as a freshman. He pulled his kid out of Ypsilanti High School, started his own prep school, Bates Academy, and like they're basically like a traveling basketball school. Like, of course, they all still learn, whether it's through homeschooling, whether it's through another local school to feed in some work, but like they play basketball in like a less regulated, less rule-made circuit where they're able to travel and do what they need to do. So Coach Donnelly and other coaches, I'm sure, are worried that like kids are going to leave the school program and go into this. And he's like, should I just quit coaching the high school sports and like open up my own academy or find like a club team that needs a coach? Because honestly, we're sitting here and people are just leaving. And I understand like why the state's shut down because the state's worried here. But if states around us, are available to be open, why aren't we allowed to be open? And that's a valid question to have. But also, I think those states aren't taking it as seriously as our governor is. So kind of a double-edged sword question and answer.
Well, yeah, and it's part of that whole federal system that we have, that state and federal system and that balance that we kind of strike, and that tends to work well for economic things, but when it comes to pandemics, it makes our responses very uneven. Why don't we switch gears, because there are a couple of big Lions developments that we have not talked about, Fletch. I won't subject the listeners to that press conference again that I played on Friday with Devin, with new coach Dan Campbell, about getting on his knees and continuing to win and all of the things. All I could think of myself listening to that was Monty Python and the Knights of Knee. It was really a little bit over the top, but I know that plays really well in this town. There are a lot of thoughts about Dan Campbell. What are yours?
He used a lot of words to say that I don't have head coaching experience and this first year is going to be really rough.
Okay.
Like he used a lot of energy to distract us from the fact that like this first year is not going to be great. We're going to get to it later, but they're going to need a quarterback.
Yeah.
They're going to need to retool that defense. The run game's probably going to suffer a bit. Don't have a quarterback currently. They technically do, but he's going to be out the door probably. He's using energy to like make people excited about, the season. So we kind of forget the fact that like how we finished and how we're looking to start, which, that's a great tactic to have. Dan Campbell's learned from some really great people, Sean Payton being one, who's an offensive guru. I'm not optimistic, but I can understand why people can be optimistic. He brings energy. Hopefully that energy is still here in 2 years. I think a 6-year contract for a guy who's never had coached before is like kind of kooky, to be honest. We'll see where this goes, in the next year or so. Hopefully the Lions show some sort of progress. I don't think they'll be a playoff team by far, but like hopefully they show some sort of progress. If they can fight and, compete in games, that's all you can really ask for.
A 6-year contract to me sounds like we know that this is going to be a rebuild, and we know that the next at least couple of years are going to be a mess.
For me, rebuild means like you're bringing in fresh faces and you are trying to like compete, maybe win a few games, but you're trying to like better people. If they sign him for 6 years, then re-sign Adrian Peterson or something like that, I'm going to scratch my head because Adrian Peterson's here to win like now. He's not here to help tutor. He can tutor. He's been a great tutor to the running backs and the Lions staff already. But if you sign players like that who are kind of fading stars, what you're trying to say is like, we would like to win now with some pieces that we have. And that worries me. If they're going to rebuild, as if they're trying to indicate, I know a lot of people were chattering about whether the Lions could trade Matt Stafford for Deshaun Watson of the Houston Texans. I don't want that. I don't, because Deshaun Watson is a rising star, a little bit older, but rising star. Still relatively young in comparison, but I don't want to have him go through a rebuild because by the time we get to the point where they're supposed to be good, he's going to be beat up. Kind of like with Calvin Johnson. By the time we got to the point where like he really should be like killing it, he was still doing great, but like his hands were all jacked up from getting hit. His body was starting to get beat up, and then he just retired because he's like, yo, I don't want to do this anymore.
What about the criticism that Dan Campbell wasn't really pursued by other football teams? Like, I don't remember us talking about him at all in previous episodes.
No, we didn't talk about him at all because he really wasn't that pursued. But a lot of people want to take chances on some coordinators, hoping that they can, make a big splash. I think it's really weird because there are a few coordinators who are not looked at, like Eric Bieniemy, who should have been looked at a bit more, did not get the opportunity, and now he has his team in the Super Bowl with the Kansas City Chiefs behind an offense that he helped pioneer. But, whatever.
Do we know that he didn't want the job? Maybe he didn't want the job.
He said in an interview he would take any coaching job that was offered to him.
Okay.
So we have to take it at face value there, that if he takes any job that's offered, he went to 8 different meetings, and he's still the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs. No one offered it to him.
Right. Well, let's get to that mysterious quarterback thing we talked about, which listeners probably already know that Matthew Stafford's done here. and he's going to probably be used for trade bait. In my mind, kind of kickstart this rebuild, because to me, if you're changing quarterbacks, this is the beginning of a rebuild, no matter what you tell me. I think for Stafford's career, this is great, and I hope he lands somewhere where he's got a shot, because he's got some skills, and they were basically wasted here in Detroit.
As much as I will harangue about him at times, I will say he has one stat that I kind of couldn't really believe until I looked it up. Of the current quarterbacks in the NFL history with 45,000 career yards and less 150 interceptions, Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford. End of list.
Wow. That's impressive.
It's kind of hard to believe that he has less than 150 interceptions for his career, given that I've seen him throw some terrible wounded ducks into the air. But that's an amazing stat to itself, considering how often he's had to throw, especially when they've been down by a lot, almost 50, 60 times in some games when they've been trailing. To hear that he has 150 interceptions or less for his career, it's kind of nuts. I think he's kind of broken. I think his back is really not really helping him. He's going to need to go to a team that really, like the Indianapolis Colts just lost Phillip Rivers. But before he got to Indianapolis, people thought Phillip Rivers was done. They're like, he's at San Diego. His career is basically over. He looks like a shell of himself, whatever. Phillip Rivers left a team that like could not stop running nose, let alone a rushing defensive end, and went to the Indianapolis Colts, who have one of the best younger cores of offensive line. And he was almost a Pro Bowler. He might have been a Pro Bowler. I'm not sure. He might have just turned it down because he's old and has like 9 million kids and just doesn't want to do that anymore, which is fair enough to him. So if Stafford were to land somewhere like Indianapolis, I think he would do great.
Here's one that's interesting, and I don't know if I believe this. It looks like Matt Patricia is heading back to New England. The latest in the rumor mill is that the Patriots are going to ante up for Stafford.
I mean, that would make sense.
That would be an interesting one for him to go with Patricia. I mean, not technically with, but at the same time, and still end up working with Patricia, but in New England.
That would make sense, given the fact that the Patriots kind of turned their back on Cam Newton after he got really beat up. And it kind of seemed like that experiment did not really pan out. It was a 1-year contract for Cam, so he can look for somewhere else to go. They might want to try to take the route back towards more of a traditional, quote-unquote, drop-back passer. And on the market, I don't know a quarterback better than Stafford currently. So if they could do something to at least, the Lions get like a good package, that'd be nice. My problem is I don't know what his going rate is. I feel like a first-round draft pick and maybe, some mid-tier ones would be good, maybe 2 first-round draft picks or something. But, it's very subjective to what the market's going to be. And, you don't want to have to wait so long for a quarterback, and then all of a sudden people are just giving you, 2 third-round picks and saying, just take it because you have nothing else. So hopefully they can get something done in the offseason where he gets to a team that helps him and the other team gives the Lions enough stuff to make them a better team, potentially.
My gut says it's going to be just within a couple of weeks or a few weeks after the Super Bowl is done that he moves. I think he's going to be gone much sooner than later so that they can have options going into the future.
I mean, it'll definitely help because it'll help them settle in who they're going to try to draft. The longer they keep Stafford, the less likely it looks like they're still going to probably take a quarterback. Less likely it looks like they'll be taking one high in the draft. They get rid of him earlier. It shows we need a quarterback. We need someone to help build this franchise up from. And, you can work from there. And once he's gone, we can start talking about who they can be looking at in the draft.
For sure. Well, Fletcher, I appreciate your time as always. Thank you so much. You can follow Fletcher on Twitter at SaintFDW. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
And we are done for today. A reminder that if you're not already, if you like what you hear, to subscribe free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you download your favorite shows. With that, I'm Jer Stays, and thank you so much for listening to Your Daily Detroit. Take care of each other, and we'll get through this together.